I wasn't sure of how to segue into this, but with this review, I might as well go into why I'm a big fan of Zelda. When I was little, one of the things I used to love was when my aunt would babysit me. I would always ask her to play The Legend of Zelda. Seeing her actually beat Ganon at the end of the game blew my mind. She passed away in 2012. I remember the feeling of emptiness it left me. But when I went to play this game for the review, much to my surprise, when I opened the files, there was her name, sitting right there. I sat there, completely surprised. It's almost like it was a little piece of her that was left behind. I guess the old saying is true. Those we love never truly do leave us. Now for the review. The Legend of Zelda was a big hit, so a sequel was to be expected. However, Nintendo decided to do something a little different. Rather than being an overhead view, Zelda 2 would be more of a side-scroller, but maintain adventure elements. But would the game actually be good? Many consider this to be the black sheep of all the Zelda games, but does that necessarily mean that it's bad? Well, first I'm going to sum up the story. So let's begin, shall we? I love using old manual art. It's so nice and detailed. A few years after Ganon's defeat at the end of Zelda 1, Ganon's minions seek to revive him by spraying Link's blood on Ganon's ashes. I knew I should have burned them when I had the chance. One day, Link found a golden triangle appear on the back of his hand and inquired Impa about it. Impa takes Link to the Northern Palace, where Link sees the slumbering form of the original Princess Zelda. Impa tells Link of how many years ago the King of Hyrule had the Triforces of Power, Wisdom, and Courage. But when he passed away, he hid the Triforce of Courage in the Great Palace. The location was only imparted to his daughter, Princess Zelda. The prince was kept in the dark. The prince tried to force the location out of his sister. A magician threatened to put Zelda under a sleeping spell, but she refused to do so. The prince realized that he was going too far, but was too late to stop the spell from putting Zelda into a deep sleep, with the magician dying shortly after. Only with all three Triforces could the princess be awakened from her slumber. Laying his sister to rest in the North Palace, and to ensure that the tragedy would never be forgotten, he decreed that all princesses born in the royal family would be named Zelda. Thus is the origin of the Legend of Zelda. Or at least, it was until the fact that they kept going backwards in time made that a bit of a moot point. Gotta love retcons! So now Link must place the 6 crystals in 6 palaces and find the Great Palace so that he can awaken Zelda. Well, we always start off with the North Palace. So make your way out, and yeah, I will admit the overworld view is a bit lackluster. Link is so small and enemies just come at you without warning. Sometimes you have it so easy, you can just walk off screen. Your basic goal is to go to your objective, fight enemies along the way, and get to the dungeons. Pretty standard, really. However, what most people have problems with this game is the difficulty. The first dungeon is pretty easy, but then you have to go to Death Mountain, which is a trial in patience and frustration. The challenge should be done in increments. The beginning is fairly easy to get you used to the game, but gradually it becomes harder the further you go, but Zelda 2 does not care. It's classic Nintendo hard difficulty at its finest. Rather than having a versatile set of weapons that Link can use, you pretty much just have your sword and your shield and your magic spells that you can learn. This was the first Zelda game to have a magic meter, but I think after Wind Waker they phased it out, but my memory is a little shaky on that. The most important spells you can learn are the life spells, which will revive your health, and it's very, very important. Or the shield spell that will make Link take less damage than usual. My favorite is the jump spell, which allows Link to jump like Mario. But back to the combat. For many enemies like Dark Nuts, you have to get up close and personal with your sword and then carefully time your shield so that you can block their attacks. My only complaint about this formula is that Link's sword is way too short and it can be hard to reach certain enemies. I really wish there was a way to get a longer sword in this game. This is the only Zelda game to not have that option available. Still, in many ways, this is the closest you'll get to an actual 8-bit sword fight. This game has a level up system, like RPGs, a first for the series. You have 3 choices as to what you want to upgrade, your sword, your life, or your magic, but you're only limited to 1 at a time. You don't have the option to choose. You build up experience points by defeating enemies or by getting these P-bags. However, one thing that severely limits this is that if you run out of lives, your EXP does not carry over, meaning you basically have to start from scratch. That is very, very annoying. You know, that is a nightmare's game over screen. Ganon has returned and Link is dead, so there's nobody that can stop Ganon now. Back at the beginning, that's real nice. In every other Zelda game that you die, you start at the dungeon. But here, nope. You run out of lives, it's back to the North Palace. So make your way back to the dungeon, often going through the same trials you did before, making sure not to die and lose a life. You can get 1-up dolls that give you an extra life, but as far as I can tell, they don't respawn, nor do they add another life to Link's inventory. So if you get another game over, you're back to 3 lives. I really don't get the logic behind this. Let's talk about the towns. Such a peaceful break from all that madness. First Zelda game to have towns to visit, which would become a staple of the series. The townspeople really don't say much. Hi. Thanks for wasting my time. Hi, Error. Wow, did that person just turn into a bat? That's unique. Still, in these towns, you can often find sages who will teach you spells, or swordsmen who will teach you the down thrust and the up thrust, 2 very useful abilities. You're supposed to talk to townspeople to get an idea of where to go, but your best bet is to look at game facts as usual. Zelda 2 is yet another example of needing a guide to know where to go unless you've memorized the game from top to bottom. For example, you have to use a spell called Spell to make a temple come out of the ground at a dead end. How else would you know that unless you had a guide or Nintendo Power? Zelda 1 and 2 were basically games that you trade tips with your friends on school bus rides. Your only source of information was magazines. There was no internet back then. One thing I must talk about is the wavy lines of enemies. I swear these are the most stressful enemies in the game, and they're always near bottomless pits, and you have the classic knockback damage. You get hit, you fall backwards. You run out of health, you die. The thing about these classic video games, it's all about reflexes. It's about timing your jumps and your attacks, so you know when to dodge and when to attack. The most important tool I find is the jump slash. This is the best way to attack the enemies, especially with those shields. Now to talk about the dungeons. The dungeons are honestly not that bad. They're a little generic and they constantly repeat themselves. I mean, you only go left or right, but they're not that hard to keep track of. Then you have to fight the boss, and here I actually think it's an improvement over the original game. The bosses are much more up close and personal. However, sometimes they do things like disappear off to the end of the screen where you can't hit them. The part I find the most annoying is the dragon boss at the end of level 6. It wouldn't be too hard except for the pits that you can fall into. Ah! And your sword is so short it can't reach it! But you adapt. You become better by playing. Eventually I was able to get to the boss of all 3 lives. Alright, I was low on health. I'll get 2 more attempts and... No! Alright, that's it. I'm doing it this time. Take that! And yeah! Nothing is more exhilarating than completing a level. I do like that it's not about getting the MacGuffins from the dungeon, it's about placing the MacGuffins in the dungeon. A bit of a twist on the usual Zelda formula. Alright, I placed all 6 crystals. Now it's time to go to the Great Palace. But first, grind. Grind your ass off. You need to get all your stats up to level 8. You need to level all that up and make sure you visit the destroyed town. Wow, a destroyed town in Zelda. That's actually kind of unique, and it adds some layer to Hyrule. But there's one person still left in the town, and he teaches you the Thunder Spell. Now, one last grind. Get to the Great Palace. This is the most treacherous journey of all, and you have to be precise. Come on, almost there? Alright, that is just totally unfair. My God. Oh, I'm down to my last life here. I'm not gonna make it. I did it. I made it to the Great Palace. Yes! The level opens up and finally you're at the final stretch of the game. Too bad I was down to 1 life. But now I gotta do the whole stretch of the game all over again and... Wait, it starts me at the Great Palace? Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the little bit of added mercy, but Jesus! This would have been nice for all the other times I had to go back to the other dungeons. The Great Palace is long and you need a guide. Oh God, you need a guide. But finally, I make it to Thunderbird. You need the Thunder Spell to be able to damage him. Everybody talks about how hard he is, but honestly, I beat him no problem. No, really, I beat him on my first attempt. I'm not kidding. Well, with that, there's one final enemy to face. You face an old man, and Link has to fight his own shadow. One thing I noticed upon going back through the footage of the game was that every time you beat a boss, the screen will flash, and Link's shadow will appear. What a very subtle piece of storytelling. And I'm not ashamed to admit, I took the cheap way of beating him. I'm tired, I got this far, I just want to beat it and move on to the next game, and that is what I'm going to do. So now for the ending. Link holds up the 3 pieces of the Triforce and Zelda wakes up. Hey, Link finally gets his kiss from Zelda. Now that's a reward worth getting after that journey. The journey was 100% worth it. So that's Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and it's quite an adventure indeed. My aunt would play this game, and when I beat the game, I kind of felt that she was there with me. So Aunt Sandy, wherever you are, I hope I made you smile. It is indeed a lingering sentiment because that's what these games are to me. Sentiment. They're special to a lot of people. And for that reason, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link deserves to be remembered as a classic. On that note, I'll be going. Please hit that like, subscribe, and bell button, and I'll see you next time.